We are covering all the winners and losers from Week 12 on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Dynasty is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, how's it going?
It's going great. How about you?
Going well. You're
Good.
also, if you're tuning into this, you're probably expecting to hear the voices of Kate and Marcus. They're our normal Monday hosts. We're switching things up a little bit for this week. It will be Matt and I recapping the games that just took place this past weekend, and we're excited to do that. Matt, we don't normally get to do this. We talk about, of course, the goings on of each week, but we're talking winners and losers from Week 12, and really, there were a bunch of each category. Of course, we had the 3 Thanksgiving games. That was a great time. But, Matt, I mean, I think if we're talking winners, we've got to start with Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, this guy, I don't know if you had to watch that game. It was one of the late ones on Sunday. So it was, even if you were watching Red Zone, it felt like you got you got to see a bunch of that game.
Oh, so much scoring.
And Josh Jacobs just carried that Raiders offense. It was so clear once they got to overtime, the plan was just to hand it to him every time and see what happened. And of course, what happened was a long game-winning touchdown to seal it for the Raiders. And the ending stat line for Jacobs is bonkers. 33 carries, 229 yards, a couple touchdowns, including that one in overtime to win it. Also caught 6 passes for 74 yards. The Raiders win 40-34, second week in a row that they walked off a team. It was Devontae Adams in Week 11, Josh Jacobs in Week 12. And, this is not a fluky performance from Josh Jacobs. We've seen this earlier in the season where he had that stretch of 3 straight 30-point games, and here he turns in close to a 50-point fantasy game, depending on your league scoring. And I mean, it's really time. It's probably past time to evaluate how we're ranking Josh Jacobs in dynasty leagues. Looking back at our ADP from November. And of course, that's nearly a month old now. Jacobs was the RB15. He was behind Najee Harris. He was behind Damian Pierce. I don't think that would be the same. We even talked about Tony Pollard on one of last week's episodes. And according to that Twitter poll, Tony Pollard was favored over Josh Jacobs. And things change quickly in the NFL.
It really does. I regret that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I am too. This is a guy we're simply undervaluing despite his performances this year.
I think he's 25 years old still, too. I mean, he's not that
old by any means.
No, I mean, you would think you have 2 high-quality years past this one before you start thinking sell or that dreaded 27-year-old thing. Couple things is I give Josh McDaniels credit. I mean, people were really hard on him, including myself, but I think he's figured out how to win with this team that really doesn't have much talent. They scored 40 points without Waller or Renfro, and the O-line's better run blocking than pass protecting. It's not a very talented group. I know a lot of people point to Jacobs and say, oh, he's in a contract year, and that's why he's blowing up this year. He's human. I'm sure that factors in. But I always thought his tape was far superior to his fantasy value every step of the way as a Raider. I mean, he's a good football player that went in the first round and deserved to. Not that this is the only thing, but the thing that I was always critical of the former staffs were, why aren't you throwing him the football? I mean, at Bama, he was very accomplished in the pass game, protection, and as a route runner. Before this season, Jacobs has one career catch on third downs. Like, that's bonkers to me. I mean, he's always been one of your best players.
Yeah, so Jacobs will certainly be a riser as we approach the offseason, which sounds crazy to even think about. But from a fantasy standpoint, we will be there very soon. Matt, when you think dynasty winners from week 12, who stands out to you?
Yeah, and real quick, I would assume that the Raiders are going to franchise Jacobs at a minimum. Like, I don't think he's hitting the open market.
I meant to say on that, you mentioned he's in a contract year. He's in a contract year because the Raiders declined his fifth-year option as a former first-round pick, and that was kind of what started fantasy managers devaluing him. The Raiders were essentially treating him like a one-year asset. They drafted Zamir White. They brought in a couple of depth pieces, and there were questions about Jacobs. Even his short-term future with the Raiders. And those questions are going away. We'll see what happens with him this offseason.
My pick is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
I think he's really progressed well this year. And I know everyone points to last year about, boy, what an awful situation he was put in. Yes, that's 100% true. And it's as bad as it could be for a rookie quarterback. And he came out the other side and is still alive. That being said, he had Travis Etienne for 2 carries yesterday. And he's throwing the ball to Zay Jones and Evan Ingram, and Kirk's fine. But it's not like all of a sudden he's in a wonderful situation. I mean, especially when Etienne went out. And he got better and better as that game's gone along. He's gotten better and better as the season's gone along. Kind of a breakout statement moment for him in the fourth quarter. I'm a big believer in what Nate Tice does. Go check him out on Twitter because he has a great, elaborate Lawrence breakdown of the fourth quarter, which is really, really impressive against a tough defense to play against in Baltimore. And I'm sitting there watching that game going, he's going to have Calvin Ridley next year. And maybe Smith Najigba as well. I mean, like it's only going to get better.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned that name, Calvin Ridley. Honestly, I mean, he hadn't been on the field. I totally forgot about that. You're right. Give Calvin Ridley to this offense. Wow. Give a first or second round wide receiver. Add that to Christian Kirk and Ridley, and you're right. It's sky's the limit for Trevor Lawrence. And maybe this is just because he was so good in college, an elite college quarterback. Maybe this is why this thought was leading into my mind yesterday Sunday watching that game. It felt like a Heisman moment, right? Every Heisman winner has that one moment, that one game where it just becomes clear they're winning the trophy that year. And it felt like that comeback against the Ravens was the Heisman moment for Trevor Lawrence. And just such an impressive comeback. When you think about where Lawrence ranks in dynasty leagues, he's kind of in that in-between mode right now because there's the elite quarterbacks that are still valued ahead of him. Obviously, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts in that group, and Herbert and Lamar, Kyler, all those guys. And maybe there's 8 or 10 of those guys. And then it's Trevor Lawrence. And, there's questions about Deshaun Watson. There's questions still about Justin Fields even. But after that group, it falls off a cliff quickly to your cousin's Carr range. So he's certainly closer to that elite tier than he is the aging veterans. And he is a big dynasty winner.
Yeah.
Matt, when we come back, we'll talk about a few other players who we can consider dynasty winners coming out of week 12.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible's releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. Find Block Forever now wherever you get your podcasts. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former NFL All-Pro offensive lineman Ryan Khalil and Audible. Offensive lineman, not a lot of offensive linemen on podcasts right now, but they definitely have a unique perspective. He's going to sit down with star players, coaches, former pros across the league to get real what happens on the field and behind the scenes, inside locker rooms, during team meetings, back at the hotel. New episodes of Block Forever will be recorded and released every week ahead of Thursday Night Football. Ryan and guests discuss how topics like the player's psyche, sports betting, playing through pain, being a leader, and how to deal with combative teammates. There's nothing out of bounds here. Available for free on Audible, wherever you get your podcasts. So here's what you do. Catch the full Block Forever series available anywhere you get your podcast, available everywhere now. Audible, get in the game.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Matt, let's continue going over some of the Dynasty winners from the week. And I want to group these guys together because they certainly have something in common. DJ Moore catches 4 balls, 103 yards, a touchdown as the Panthers get a win. Garrett Wilson, 5 catches, 95 yards, and a couple scores. And Elijah Moore, 2 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. And, of course, the commonality between those 3 wide receivers is all 3 were playing with a new quarterback in Week 12. Sam Darnold starts for the Panthers. Mike White starts for the Jets. He could be considered certainly a winner in his own right.
Sure.
And I'm sure we'll talk more about him on our waiver show tomorrow. But let's focus right now on those receivers. DJ Moore, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson. These are all players that we already liked a ton, but we were starting to have questions because of the quarterback play, because of the offense. Are we considering these guys unlocked at this point? What are you thinking?
The Jets, yes. I'm not so sure about DJ Moore. I mean, we've seen 800 quarterbacks there, and I'm sure their first-round pick's going to be another one. Kind of like you said, I've never had any doubts about the player, DJ Moore, and I would not have traded him if I was in charge of the Panthers. He's a foundational piece. I can't say that, boy, all of a sudden he's got a good situation, though. You know what I mean? Like, it's just been
we kind of know. We still know what Sam Darnold is.
Right. I mean, I don't know that Darnold just found the answer and unlocked all his talent either. Not that Mike White's a longtime starter, but he flashed last year. I just see him as a much more efficient player than Darnold, or insert Panther quarterback here. Yeah. And Wilson, to me, is an obvious superstar in the making. Garrett Wilson. And Moore's a guy that you and I have loved from the beginning that's kind of broke our hearts. But that was the most encouraging thing for me, is now Moore's back in the equation. Wilson's going to be the one. It's a really good combination. But I don't know that the Panthers or Jets have all of a sudden found their quarterback.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, we'll definitely talk more about Mike White on tomorrow's waiver show. We'll get Matt's thoughts on him. Yeah. Matt Jones. This one surprised me a little bit, Matt. This was one of those Thanksgiving games in the Vikings. Matt Jones, 382 passing yards, couple of scores. The Patriots end up losing a close one. This still feels a little fluky for Mac Jones. I don't think we can start expecting this type of production on a weekly basis, even if we look at him and assume his starting job is very safe. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I think it eliminates Bailey Zappi talk, which is a good step in the right direction. I'm not sure if the Patriots were still considering that or not. I think it's an example number 800 that quarterbacks take time, and it's not a linear, consistent climb. I mean, sometimes you take 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 3 steps forward, another step back. This was a huge step forward and far and away the best he's looked, maybe in the league, but certainly this year.
Anybody else, just kind of a quick shout out, anybody else stand out to you as a dynasty winner from week 12?
Christian Watson.
He did it again.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just, I just wanted to see more I was a little worried that he was just going to be a flashy touchdown only type, but whether it's Love, Rodgers, whomever, it looks like they've found a guy, and we know that there's not much in his way. He has a lot of ability. He's acclimating very quickly now. So I think he's like out of the woods.
Yeah, Christian Watson, 6 targets, 4 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Of course, the Packers lose 40-33. Allen Lazard, though, kind of taking a step back, and whether that's because of the Christian Watson breakout or not, Lazard just a couple catches, 23 yards. You're right. I mean, Watson certainly feels like the wide receiver one in that offense moving forward. At 6 touchdowns in the past 3 games for him. That same game, I mean, we're almost taking the performance of Jalen Hurts for granted at this point. He had 125 rushing and passing in the first half. First player ever to do that in NFL history. The Eagles were able to take it easy in the second half, and Hurts ends up with 153 passing, 2 touchdowns, 157 rushing, and really made it all look easy. A lot of that was due to some pretty poor run defense by the Packers. But yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts just continues to be one of the superstars in the league. I hope you bought him already. I didn't. Matt didn't. We were both detractors or doubters of Jalen Hurts, and we both have come full circle. But unfortunately for us, too late on that one. He's amazing. Rachaad White, a couple of rookie running backs, Rachaad White and Brian Robinson. We'll wrap up with those guys. I mean, White might have taken this job from Leonard Fournette.
It would shock me if he didn't. He's certainly a better weapon at this stage. Fournette looks very shot. I don't have a lot of faith in that offense, but yeah, White is definitely a riser. I guess Robinson qualifies as well, and he's easy to root for, not just because of getting shot. I mean, I like his style, and he does all the dirty work. I just don't think he has a high ceiling. I mean, he's a pure volume guy, but he's in the right situation to get volume.
Very true. Matt, it's all been rosy so far, but we've got some bad news too. We've got some losers, unfortunately, to discuss. We'll do that right after this break.
I've told you a bunch about Prize Picks, everyone, and I've done really well there. And it's a great way for me because it works out really well because I don't like playing against other random people that might just get lucky. This is just me versus myself. And what you do is you pick between 2 and 5 players. And if they score more or less than your Prize Picks projection, you have a chance to win up to 10 times your money on any one of your entries. So like I said, it's just you versus the projections available. So it's just me in my own head figuring out my angles. And I wish I had an insight on esports or disc golf or Euro basketball that isn't as nearly as popular as NFL, which is what I do, because I think you'd really do well with a specialty sport like that. But of course, they have everything you can find: PGA, NASCAR, tennis, college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, and of course, the big ones, as I mentioned, NBA, NFL. Entries are super quick, under a minute for sure. It's super easy, safe and fast withdrawals. They're operational in 30 states right now, as well as Canada. So please download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks gives you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks gives you $50. So don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for instant deposit match up to $100.
All right, Matt, we are recapping week 12. We've talked about the winners. It's time to discuss some losers, and there were a few, unfortunately. Who stood out to you as a player you doubted in Dynasty?
Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 2 weeks in a row. The Texans are so much worse than any team in the league. I mean, and maybe there's a slight rookie wall situation coming up here with Pierce, considering how hard he runs, how much is asked of him. But this offense has no threat. They don't look like they're interested in playing anymore. Rarely do I even say that. And it's just so easy to spend all your attention trying to stop Pierce, and he has no chance. I mean, I saw some unbelievably alarming stats of negative yardage gained before first contact 2 weeks in a row. Like they're not blocking for him at all against like 10-man fronts. So I think you can't even start him anymore,
Yeah, it's been rough. If you started him the past 2 weeks, of course, this past week against Miami, 5 carries for 8 yards, also had 3 catches for 8 yards. The previous week against Washington, also 8 yards rushing, 9 yards receiving. He was RB 45 2 weeks ago. He's going to be in that same range. Yeah, simply not a startable asset at this point. I still have some hope for Pierce long term. I'm not totally giving up on him. But when your offense is so bad and so broken, there's really no other threats. And of course, they made the quarterback change this week as well. Yeah, I don't know if you can use Dameon Pierce the rest of this season. Speaking of broken offenses, what about the Ravens, Matt? Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's rough.
The numbers are okay. I think he'll probably end up as a borderline QB1 for the week after this Monday night game coming up soon. 254 passing yards and a score, 14 rushes, 89 yards. The fantasy production is okay. But the offense in general is looking rough. Gave up another huge lead that we talked about that earlier with Trevor Lawrence. Is this going to get better anytime soon?
I really worry. A couple big picture things that worry me, and it has nothing to do with Jackson because he's the only reason that they're even slightly respectable, to be honest with you. I mean, they really only have one weapon, and that's Andrews. They're counting on Deshaun Jackson and Ricard and, Demarcus Robinson. And sure, Bateman was in the equation. That's unfortunate. And the left tackle being out has hurt them dramatically. I don't think Stanley will ever be the same. I mean, it's been several years fighting this bad ankle injury. And I worry they play football so uniquely in Baltimore's offense. And there's a reason that, especially NFC teams, the first time they play Lamar, they lose. But now people kind of have a beat on what they do. Mm-hmm. And Greg Cosell says this all the time. They play with 4 skill guys instead of 5 because they want, Ricard out there blocking. And of those 4 skill guys, only one of them's good. So who scares you besides Lamar's immense skills? They worry me a lot.
Yeah, well, even thinking a little more long term, and yes, as you mentioned, Bateman's been out. He was expected to be their wide receiver 1, but we're now 2 years into his career, and he's been hurt, much of that time. Same thing for J.K. Dobbins, right? Like, I mean, we like Dobbins, we like Bateman in Dynasty, and they both have been valued very highly. Are we sure either one of those guys is really good on the NFL level? We haven't been able to see it. Yeah, we haven't been able to see it consistently because they haven't been able to stay on the field. And you're right; they have one guy. They have Mark Andrews outside of Lamar. So, I mean, they really. It feels like they brought it on themselves. Of course, they made the Hollywood Brown trade, and then they have the rest of the offseason where they don't bring in anybody. Right? They didn't bring in anybody to fill that hole. They expect Bateman to step up, and he's unable to do that ultimately because of the injury. It's just frustrating if you're a Ravens fan, and it's certainly impacting Lamar Jackson from a fantasy standpoint.
And real quick, I know you and I both like Bateman, and I still have hope for him, but that was even a big ask. Hey, it's year 2. We hardly signed him in year 1. Be a number 1 NFL receiver. Like, I thought that was asking a lot.
Absolutely. Another bad game for DeAndre Swift, 19 rushing yards, 24 receiving yards. The Lions lose. This is not
a lifetime part-time player.
Yeah, I'm starting to think so. I mean, he's never been featured, and he's never been healthy for a full season. So, I mean, to me, he's outside of my top 25 in Dynasty.
Running backs or total?
No, total.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not taking him in the first 2 rounds. Which,
I wouldn't.
you know, I
fight
mean,
Trevor.
maybe that sounds obvious at this point now, but that's still about where he's being valued.
2 months ago,
couple
though,
other
he was
ones.
like running back 4.
Exactly.
You know?
Another bad game for Russell Wilson, 142 passing
He
yards and
stinks.
a touchdown. They get destroyed by Carolina. I mean, the only question now is, can they fix this somehow in the offseason? Certainly going to see some changes in Denver. And this one kind of hurts to put on the loser category, Matt. Jacoby Brissett in Cleveland, 210 passing yards and a touchdown. They get a nice win over Tom Brady and the Bucs, and the only reason he lands on this list is because we've already had Deshaun Watson announced as the Week 13 starter. So unfortunately, Jacoby Brissett is a dynasty loser. I hope he lands on a new team and gets a starting job in 2023.
He certainly was not the problem for the Browns this year. I thought he played exceptionally well, exceeded my expectations, played well again on Sunday. We knew this day was coming. So kind of as you mentioned it, I mean, yeah, he's a loser, but he put a lot of tape out there, and in Superflex leagues, I would love to have him.
And we'll wrap up with some injuries. Unfortunately, there were a bunch of them in Week 12. Darnell Mooney, ankle injury. His season is over. Both 49ers running backs get hurt. Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell. We'll see how much time, if any, they will miss. Travis Etienne missed most of that game. We talked about that earlier. Sounds like he's going to be good to go for next week.
Okay.
Michael Carter missed much of the game. He's day-to-day with an ankle injury as well. And then Aaron Rodgers left the game early. Jordan Love came in. We'll talk more about that one tomorrow.
Allen Robinson's also out for the year, too. Not that anyone was real psyched about him.
Yeah, is it bad? I didn't even find that worth
he's
mentioning.
out for the year. Yeah.
You know, I think the Rams are.
They're out for the year.
Yeah, they're all done for the year, right? I mean, we may not see Kupp, Stafford, A-Rob already done. They're packing it in, and I would say I understand it, except they don't have their own first rounder, so that certainly stings for the Rams.
The Rodgers situation feels a little like the Stafford situation, though.
I'm starting to wonder that as well. We'll talk about Jordan Love in our waiver show tomorrow.
Okay.
Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the Locked On Dynasty channel on YouTube. Remember to follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL. And I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.